our final topic. And, you guys want them more, and we're going to start doing them more. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with this one. It's time for another Let's Talk About. So today we're going to discuss a film that is, I wouldn't say it's up there in the term. Like, a lot of people would say this film isn't controversial. They would say it's not. It's still well known. But the reason I'm even bringing this film up is because I had a friend talk to me the other day, and she was saying, she was talking about in anger about somebody, and she said, "I'm gonna curb stomp that motherfucker." And I automatically laughed, and I said, "Do you know where that's from?" And she goes, "No, I don't." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That is actually, I explained what it is, but more importantly, I said that is pretty much made popular by a movie known as American History X." And she's like, "Oh, I've never heard of it." And I was like, you quote, this violent act, and you don't even know exactly what it is or where it came from. And it wasn't just that. I had a conversation with someone else where I was discussing this movie, and they had no idea what it was. And it really got to me, the fact that no one really is everyone is kind of forgetting about 1998's American History X, starring Edward Norton. This is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful indie films that has ever been made. I mean, one of the most eye-opening subjects. I mean, this movie is literally, to me, beautiful. When I talk about what is a good film that can basically give you feels, turn the pages, this is one of those, is American History X. Of course, the story of Edward Norton, who basically is a neo-Nazi, who ends up going to jail with his little brother following directly in his footsteps, only for his brother to come out of jail and basically tell him that, it's not about hate, and hate can just destroy your life, and ultimately tries to, direct him in a different direction. However, ultimately, for those of you who have never seen the film, the movie ends on a very, very, I would guess you could say, a pretty fucking depressing note, where the brother is actually killed by an African American character who basically he was in a scuffle with. And it really goes back to that whole, there's a lot of monologuing too about hate, and trying to understand the other side. And I think this film is it's incredibly relevant, because the more I see it, and the more I feel like it disappears in society. And I feel like it disappears because it's a subject that people do not want to have. They do not want to have this conversation about what the material is about. Even if you don't want to have the conversation about racism, you can have the conversation about hate, and how hate can actually destroy somebody from within, and it can destroy a whole family, pretty much, is what this movie shows. So I want to go ahead and get everyone else's take on American History X before we actually delve into the whole controversy of the film and what's actually makes the movie really unique. So, Luke, you seem to have a little itch here, so I want to hear what you have to say about American History X.
Like you said, yeah, it is a very dark film. It's very uncomfortable. So if you go into this, you need to understand that this movie is like it's really it is designed to give you the idea of how a reasonable person, or even, or at the very least a vulnerable person, can fall into that kind of extremism. Um, the character of Edward Norton is seemingly a normal kid with a normal suburban family, and after a tragedy in which his father dies, we see how he shifts into this gang of neo Nazis in L.A.
Venice Beach.
So and we see him go to jail. We kind of see how he becomes who he is, and how it affects his family, and then we see what gets him out of it, when he sort of just when he realizes that the whole thing is not an ideological thing; it's just a group of angry people, just trying to acting that out, and they're trying they focus it in to this very dark ideology. Um, you know, some people might give it the wrong reputation because it can be misinterpreted as sympathetic to neo Nazis. It's not that type of movie.
It's not.
It is not. It is simply showing them as human, and obviously, to a degree, that makes it uncomfortable, because if it's a main character, you automatically, on some level, have to sympathize with them because it's the main character. That's the nature of it. But the point is that whenever you see these guys, they are not amorphous creatures that formed out of the shadows. or created in a lab. They were people like you and me who fell down a very unfortunate
Right.
rabbit hole. Good performances all around.
Great music.
Great music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
the curb stomping scene, I was explaining to somebody, it is one of the most controversial. I mean, that was an outrageous scene when it first came out. It was
so bad, but yeah, it's bad.
So
It's
bad.
so unfortunate.
I remember people going like, "This should be rated X because of that."
Yes,
scene.
I remember that. Yes,
yeah. I remember when I first heard about this film, American History X, people were saying like, "Oh, it's rated X. There's a scene in it that's just so crazy," and I was like, "What? Come on, it can't be that bad." When I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
yeah.
Steve, I hate to pose this question on you, but as a as an African American, Steve, how do you take this film like on that side of things? I mean, you're watching. I mean, and you're in California too, so you guys are actually around this kind of shit.
I was around it. I grew up around Venice Beach, so I kind of seen not like things like this, but there's definitely stories like this and reforms. I don't know, man. I think that this is so true to heart for anywhere. It doesn't even matter where. Especially when the more visceral parts is not just that curse stop scenes. It's like the scenes he has with his family.
Yes.
When he's screaming at like his mom's boyfriend.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
No music. And it's long as hell, dude. They hang on scenes of him like being abusive. And then I don't know if you catch this too, Rob. There's a lot of like close-ups that just linger on like Ed Norton's face, when he's getting arrested, the whole classic black and white. They just linger on that scene so long. They slow it down. They make sure you're like getting every ounce of out of that scene.
I want to point this out too, because I felt this when I first seen this movie when I was a kid, and it kind of speaks to me why I wanted to bring this up about the hate. Anger goes a long way, and when you're a kid, you can actually feel more sympathy for Edward Norton as a character, because in a way, your anger towards something like that or a person, it could actually feel like when he actually does that, when he pulls out his when he looks at the Jewish teacher and he rips it when they're at dinner and he pulls out his swastika, he's like, "You see this?" He's like, "This means not welcome."
Not welcome. Yeah.
It's like you can feel that fucking hate, and then if you're an angry person, you can understand that, because we've all kind of been there where we, in a way, wanted to tell somebody that was angry, maybe not in that context, but we've all been at that verbal hate.
Definitely, where people have exploded like that with just so much emotion, and that's why the guy was just like looking at him, because he's just like,
"You're lost.
I can tell you're lost, and you're just hurting. You're so pissed at everything." And again, dude, this shows how quick people can go down any rabbit hole, like at a drop of a hat. Just like Luke said, he's just a normal guy in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like nothing was wrong with him at all. And he went down, he met just one person and went to one thing. And that's how quick, like anything, especially something like this, it's so crazy. But it's so accurate. That's what's so interesting, Rob. And like, again, another controversy thing is having that ending, right? With his brother, him dealing with it. And it's like it came back to bite me.
Full circle.
And the movie ends.
Full circle.
And there's no end. There's no.
It's like you can't just stop. Like just because you stop hating doesn't mean the repercussions of it stop. You know what I mean? It's the ripple effect of it.
Ripple effect.
What do you think of American History X?
It's been a long time since I've seen it, and I'll be honest with you, but when I did, like, I could understand like that hate and stuff, because like you guys grew up like having to witness it. I grew up being told we were supposed to hate you guys.
Exactly.
That's how I was raised.
Absolutely.
But I chose at an age where I was mature enough, like, hey, I shouldn't hate someone because of the color of their skin. I don't like someone for their actions. My girls are learning. You don't ever hate someone. You can strongly dislike them for their actions, not by the color of their skin. And it's like, it took him going to prison and having that rude awakening, like, man, this is wrong. And it made me feel sad, because I feel like as a society, we should have something more besides, oh, he's a bad apple, let's just throw him in prison. One or two things could have happened. He could have learned his ways or came out worse.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's true.
And luckily he came out, learning the wrong of his ways, but still, And just because we stop the hate, like me growing up stopping it, it doesn't stop everywhere.
Exactly.
And it never freaking will. We'll always have that hate for a certain race or a certain color of skin. And no matter what we do as a society, it's always going to be there. And maybe we should learn better ways to handle it instead of sending
But this
people
is
to
one
prison.
of those ways, I think, like through the perception of film. And
Yes.
I always get that. I always say that here on the show because I feel like films really reflect society, and that's why to me it's kind of disheartening to know that this film has kind of fallen by the wayside. But as Luke was saying too, it is an uncomfortable subject for everybody. Not everyone wants to watch something like this or hear this subject, but I feel like it does need to be seen more. I feel like it needs to actually be kind of one of those movies that you do show people. Everyone has those kind of growing up, coming of age films. This is one of them. I think that should be
This has
honestly
to
shown.
happen. Yeah, shown. I feel like that too. Just because of the nature of just kids being volatile and the internet being a thing and how quickly kids can go down any type of rabbit hole.
There was 3 shootings in Phoenix in one night from kids at parties that were 17 and younger. And that's why also I bring this subject up, because it's like there's so much visceral hate even at a young age.
At a young
with
age.
people.
And a lot and such like a, a negligence for life. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
everyone's so willing to like kill another person so willingly. You know what I mean? Like that. This is like you said, Rob. That scene about the curb stomp was huge in 1999, right? But I feel like that's just an action that kids will do now, and somebody's filming it, and they think it's funny.
You just hit one of my biggest points. Is like people remember that scene, but they don't remember the movie it came from and why it happened.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
don't. They don't understand that he did that to that guy because he was literally enraged by hate.
You're right.
He was literally down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. I mean, that's so crazy, right? Isn't that weird? And like you said, I think it is a movie that is it's also quoted too. There are a lot of people that quote the film, but they don't know what they're quoting.
Yes.
So that's another oddity that happens.
One of the oddest things about this movie too, which I also found out, was that the director who actually made this movie, and Steve, if you can get his name for me, I'd appreciate that. He actually tried to remove his name off this film several times because he feels like Edward Norton and Miramax stole the film.
Well, the final edit is Edward Norton's.
Yes.
Like this is not his. The final film is not his edit, and so I'm curious what his edit was.
Same here.
Yeah.
He said that the movie had less of the brother aspect in it, from what I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, he said a lot of things. The director's name was Tony Kane, by the way.
First time he made a movie too, when he made this.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's so weird that I heard that a lot, and the things have changed with Edward Norton about him saying he has multiple cuts, that he's been making changes throughout the years. One of the co-stars in the film, Guy Torry, has said that too, where when he was on set, he was basically directing half of the movie. So.
He didn't like Edward Norton on the set, the director. Also too, that Edward Norton apparently worked hand in hand with Miramax to basically take the film from him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because it's almost like I've heard Luke talk about this with films, and I always like remember this. It's a beautiful disaster in a way, because I really think American History X is a captivating film. I mean, one of the key moments I always remember is when he tries to cover up the swastika when he's in the shower. That's such an unbelievable scene that has no dialogue, no nothing, and you know exactly what it means. You know what it means. You don't have to have any kind of context to it to know what he's getting at.
I'm curious. I have to imagine that to a certain degree, the director, because again, it is well lauded. It's a very, the movie is well respected, but it has to be, probably doesn't like the fact that this movie that he did not plan on is so, is so solidified as this sort of treatise on hate. So it can't be good. I also hold on. So Tony Kane, right?
Yeah.
Tony Kane. Okay.
Well, Luke's looking that up. I just, I really do. I really think this is such a iconic indie film too. Not just for like just movies, but the indie film movement. This movie did a lot. Like I remember, this movie really helped people look that way towards indie films.
Oh yeah, definitely.
movie was made in today's age and society, that it would actually be made and do well?
Absolutely not. That's
Yeah.
why I bring it
I
up
don't know
now.
if this would actually be made. Period. To be
There
honest.
is so much more sympathetic to both sides now. Things to equivalate
Yeah.
people to make money. No, I don't think that movie could actually be made.
Because this is this movie was made specific to shock people
in a
like
in a
Fred is
day and
saying.
age too, when they were willing to take risks on indie films.
When they were really, yes, that is such a big, because let's say a streaming service like Netflix did it. Netflix presents American History X. Do you honestly think they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to go this ballsy?
We're gonna take this money to fucking put Nazi shit on here? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be very just bare bones. It's going to be very open ended. There won't be any of those.
They're
scenes.
singing "Glory, Glory, Hallelujah" in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That would be instantaneously done, because that is a real racist song.
Yep. That song, that song alone.
Did you find something about the director?
Oh no, I'm just looking him up. Oh, he also had another movie that
Oh yes, he did. Blow.
get released. So that's a shame.
He also made Blow.
Yeah.
He also did Blow. That was the other movie he did. Which, that's a whole nother subject. I'm not a big fan of Blow.
That's another, me either.
But American History X, guys, I have to say, as a movie, I give it, honestly, it's going to be one of the higher ones up on Real Sharks. I give it a 9 out of 10, guys. I mean, I honestly do.
Me too. I think
I'd
it
say
is. It's
so.
a certifiable classic that has earned its reputation rather than becoming like a cult classic or whatever. It didn't do all that well when it came out, again, because of just how violent, but it grew over time because people respected it.
Yep.
And I think it earns its 9 out of 10.
Donna?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Luke, would you have any I always like to ask you for this now, and I'm going to start doing this to you more on the show. Do you have any criticism of the movie itself?
Well, I do think on the producer side and Edward Norton's side, I think they were disrespectful to the director. One thing to point out is that Tony Kaye himself is Jewish. So, it is interesting subject matter for him to tackle, American neo-Nazis. So whatever, regardless, I think certainly there's something to be said about how they treated him as a director with his own film. I also think there are elements to it that are misinterpreted, and it's not necessarily the fault of the film that some people might latch on. In fact, maybe even some neo-Nazis might dig it, which that's not cool. They don't get to do that.
You're right. You're right.
It's
like the movie Higher Learning. And for those of you who don't know, I'm sure Steve knows that movie.
Oh yeah.
That's another movie that neo-Nazis hold on to, because that's a movie about neo-Nazis shooting up a school.
Yeah. Well, like it's about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of them is about
when Ice Cube was gangster. When he was so gangster.
Yeah.
So gangster.